Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe my channel, like my video, and do not forget to click the button. There are a lot of things that are happening in Africa which we don't know about, and we also have got problems in Africa that we have no knowledge of how Africa is. For me, in this video, I would like to show you the Africa that you don't know. It has always been said that the continent of Africa is the continent that is dark, but I would like to show you in this video some of the cities in Africa which are not dark at all, but they're very beautiful. And you are going to be surprised to see that in Africa, though we are taking much time to get united, Africa is more beautiful. And in fact, if we had united like 4 years ago, 10 years ago, Africa would have been so great by now. But because we have been so reluctant, so we are walking on the snail's pace. But I believe that the time to come, Africa will come together and understand the importance of unity in Africa. As you see in this video, the cities you are seeing, the places you are seeing that are in Africa, these places are not in Europe. They are in Africa, and there are wonderful places, wonderful cities. And many of you, maybe you have never been in such places. You have never been in Cape Town. You have never been in Cairo. You have never been in Egypt. You have never been in Casablanca. You have never been in Kampala. You have never been in Nairobi. We cannot walk within Africa freely because we have been divided. We have been working against one another, and so it is very difficult for us to travel within the continent. But this is now the different time from the past. Now we have come to know that it is good for us to come together. It is good for us to begin to love one another in the continent and begin to do things as one. You can see the continent is very big, and if we can start to walk within the continent and begin to be connected, we are going to make the continent grow big, and it will be so. Doing things as one is very important in the continent. Coming together is crucial for the development of the continent. We've got a beautiful continent. I know that if we can begin to be in the continent, working together to develop the continent, I don't see the need for us to be going to Europe, to be going to Americans, because our continent will be so bright, will be so great, that working within the continent will be so beneficial and rewarding. But now, because the continent is divided, and it is very difficult for me to travel within the continent, and like it is the case for me to travel to Europe. It's very hard to travel within the continent. You have to understand that. That's why our brothers, our sisters, our children are leaving the continent for America. And they spend more money for a person to live in Nigeria for Europe. He spends more money. So we have to understand that we need to begin to develop the continent for easy travel, so that we can travel in different places within the continent to meet our brothers and sisters, to share ideas, to meet, to connect. Because if we don't travel within the continent, we cannot connect and we cannot relate to one another, because everybody else is in his own country within the same continent. That's why it is very difficult for a person who is South African to have a good connection with a person who is Nigerian. It's very difficult for us in Africa to love one another because we don't travel freely. We don't travel easily. It's difficult to travel in the continent. And actually the borders that we have in Africa have created the barrier for communication, have created the barrier for relationships, have created a barrier of connections within the continent. We have to understand this. So the easiest way for Africa to come together is for us now to begin to travel within the continent from one country to another easily, freely. This is very important for the continent to develop. You can see we have got beautiful continent, beautiful cities. You can see Casablanca, you can see Nairobi, you can see Kenya, Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. You can see Benin, the Republic. You can see Cape Verde. There are more beautiful cities, and actually there are more beautiful cities, even some of them haven't included on this. But I tell you, Africa is more beautiful. Africa can greatly grow, and we can become great people within the continent if we come together. We need to do something for the continent to become developed. Let us develop our continent. Let us build our continent. Let us love one another within the continent. It is ours. If we don't begin to love our continent by encouraging travel within the continent, encouraging trade within the continent, we cannot develop. Because you already know that if we don't speak one language, that is, if we don't love one another, I'm not trying necessarily to speak about having one language as a common language we can use in the continent. Already we speak English in Africa. Already we speak French in Africa. We can even travel. There are people who don't speak English, but they travel to Europe. They travel to England. They travel to America. Go and find out. There are people who cannot speak English, but they are in America. You know why? Because there is always the door opened. There's an opportunity that people can travel to America as long as they have got all the necessary documents to go to America. As long as they have got money, they travel to America. They are able to do that. So within the continent, we can begin to do things as one. Let us not necessarily look on the language as the barrier, but let's now open the borders. Seeing the beautiful places in this video, you don't see these cities, you don't see these countries on the media. This is Africa. The countries you are seeing are in Africa. The cities are in Africa. They're very beautiful. And most cities, I haven't included Johannesburg. I haven't included the whole Cape Town there. Of course, there is Western Cape Town in this video. But there are more beautiful places in Africa. Nigeria has got beautiful places. In Mozambique, there are beautiful cities. You know, there are cities in Malawi, there are cities in Zambia, there are cities in all over Africa, Ivory Coast. We've got cities in Senegal, beautiful cities. They're not here. So if we can come together, ladies and gentlemen, if Africa can be united and begin to do things as one, I don't see that Africans can be leaving Africa for Canada, where they go and work in a miserable condition, only to get $1, Canadian dollar, which they use in order to build back home. But people are living in a very difficult condition in Canada, in America, everywhere in Europe where they go to work. We can make Africa become great, and we can develop within the continent of Africa if we begin to know that we are one. We've got beautiful Africa. Africa has got beauty. I tell you, we just don't know how beautiful and great Africa is. I would like to encourage African leaders to understand that you should encourage all African people to begin to connect, to work together, to love one another. It is very important. This is not to say that we need now to all of us to go to Cape Town, to go to Johannesburg. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But if we open the borders in Africa, if we begin to work together in Africa, begin to connect, to travel easily in Africa, we are not going all to be in Johannesburg. It's impossible. Others will go to Nigeria. Others will go to Nigeria. And we will be going everywhere in the continent. We will stay wherever we want to stay. And we can do things and we can grow. Some people, they don't want to come to our countries, but people don't want even to come and stay in our countries. They just want to travel freely. They just want to come in our country, in our city, to buy things and go back home. But we've crossed the borders and people are smuggling things because you have crossed the borders. And therefore, there's nothing that is happening. It's the same as saying, open the borders for people to move freely because people are smuggling. They're even not paying tax. They get things in your country and go to their countries, smuggling things. So let us come together as the continent, as people in Africa. We've got beautiful cities in Africa, as you can see in this video. We just need to come together. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more. Bye-bye.